Everyone loves Lucy. The story of this great white is the classic Finding Nemo tale, but about 2,000 pounds heavier. A 1.5-ton female great white drifts past the cage off Isla Guadalupe, and the camera stays on her as she rolls her flank toward the lens. That is when the bite comes into view. A deep, perfectly circular scar wrapping her entire chest, spanning nearly half the length of her body. The curve of it is so wide, it does not match anything alive in these waters. Her distinctive tail wound looked fresh, and she seemed in desperate need of a good meal. Nobody on that boat speaks. Nobody surfaces, because the thing every diver is about to realize in the next 60 seconds, the thing that made that mark, is not supposed to exist. The Nautilus Explorer. The Nautilus Explorer has been running shark expeditions to Guadalupe for more than a decade. The island is a lonely volcanic spike rising out of cold, deep water roughly 130 miles off the coast of Baja, California, and every autumn, the great whites come back to feed on the elephant seal colonies on the rocks. For people who work these waters, 1.5-ton sharks are a Tuesday. The crew that morning had expected a normal shoot. Hoyos sees her first. A veteran of hundreds of cage dives, he would normally describe the female approaching his lens as textbook, mature, heavy-bodied, close to 3,000 pounds. She circles the cage once at a lazy patrol speed, rolls to scan the divers with one dark eye, and that is when the light catches her midsection. We descended slowly inside our observation cage, hearts pounding, cameras rolling, and then it appeared. A colossal great white shark, covered in scars across its entire body, as if bearing the marks of ancient battles. Here is the catch. What he is looking at is not a scratch. It is not a rake mark from a rival. It is a deep, perfectly circular scar that wraps around her entire chest from just behind her pectoral fins all the way across her belly. The outline is unmistakable. Something clamped down on this shark with a jaw wide enough to encircle half the length of her body. And then, for some reason, it let her go. Hoyos keeps the camera rolling. He does not speak on the radio. He does not need to. Every diver in the cage has seen it at the same moment, and the boat above has gone quiet in a way that only happens on the water when something is very wrong. She makes one more slow pass. Then she drifts back into the blue. The footage goes to shore. The clip leaves Guadalupe that night on a hard drive. By the end of the week, it is being pulled frame by frame on a monitor at a marine biology lab on the mainland, where shark researcher Dr. Mauricio Hoyos Padilla, one of the lead scientists who has cataloged the Guadalupe population for years, is staring at the scar and saying almost nothing. He measures the arc 3 different ways, against the shark's own girth, against the known dentition of every large predator in the eastern Pacific, against the cage bars in the frame for scale. Each time, the number that comes back is the same, and each time, the number is wrong. So here is the deal. A great white is not a soft target. These animals are armored at a level most people do not appreciate until they put a hand on one. This tough guy is a 14-footer who has mixed it up with other apex predators and has the battle scars to prove it. Zapata is a very large shark. To sustain the wounds it received, the attacking shark must have been very large, possibly 18 or 20 feet in length. Their hide is coated in dermal denticles, tiny, interlocking tooth-shaped scales. Padilla has described the texture as closer to industrial sandpaper than to skin. Their muscle is reinforced cartilage, denser than bone at the impact sites. To leave a permanent encircling scar on a body like that is not a thing that happens during ordinary shark life. Something has to go catastrophically wrong, or something enormous has to go right. Padilla does not say what he thinks made the bite. Not on camera, not that week. What he does, according to the people in the lab with him, is pull up archive footage of every adult female the team has tagged in the last 15 seasons and begins scrolling. He is looking for matches, and, before the night is over, he has found one. The wound. The second animal is a female tagged 2 seasons earlier near the southern drop-off of the island. She had a similar arc along her left flank, shallower, healed longer, but the curvature is the same, and the spacing between the individual tooth impressions is the same. And when Padilla overlays the two scars digitally, they are almost certainly made by the same kind of mouth. And get this, when the team pushes the geometry of the arc into a measurement they can publish, the number is staggering. To match the shape pressed into the Guadalupe female, the attacking jaw would have needed to open roughly 6 feet across at the hinge. Not theoretically, measured. The mouth of a typical great white, even a record holder, does not reach that width. Deep Blue, the largest confirmed great white ever filmed, measures close to 20 feet from nose to tail. Her jaw, impressive as it is, does not approach the span of the arc pressed into this female's body. Whatever made the wound was not the same species of animal doing the surviving. The attacker was operating on a different scale entirely. Padilla runs the reconstruction 3 different ways. Each time, he comes back to the same estimate. The jaw belongs to an animal somewhere between 25 and 30 feet long. In the known records of the Eastern Pacific, nothing in that size class is supposed to exist officially. Picture a school bus with a working set of teeth at one end, moving through water at hunting speed. That is the scale the team is now trying to place inside their own survey area. The shock of impact alone should have ended her. Instead, she is circling cages full of tourists with cameras. It is just this big flat black eye. It stares right at you, and all of a sudden you get this feeling that it is really thinking about me. Sharks are making a circle around the boat, closer and closer, like a spiral. The more at ease they are, the closer they get. The disconnect between what the evidence demands and what the Pacific is supposed to contain has sent Padilla and his colleagues back through their field notes, looking for every anomaly they might have dismissed. They are not finding comfort, they are finding more scars. If mysteries like this are why you come to this channel, hit subscribe before the next clip, because the next time a dive boat off Guadalupe pulls a scar like this out of the water, we want the footage reaching you first. The tag. Before anyone at Padilla's lab allows the word megalodon anywhere near a press release, they have to deal with a piece of data that has been sitting quietly in a desk drawer of modern marine biology for more than a decade. A piece of data that quietly haunts every researcher who has ever had to explain it. In 2014, a team off the coast of Western Australia tagged a 9-foot great white as part of a long-term migration study. The tag streamed data back in near real time: depth, speed, ambient water temperature, body orientation. For several months, everything was routine. And then one afternoon, without warning, the tag recorded something nobody had seen before. The shark plunged. Not in the controlled, muscular way great whites hunt. A sharp vertical drop. The depth reading fell past 500 feet, past 1,000, past 1,500. At nearly 2,000 feet down, the ambient temperature around the device jumped from 46 degrees Fahrenheit to almost 80 in seconds. This is where it gets weird. Water does not change temperature that fast. Only one thing does. The tag was no longer in the ocean. The tag was inside something. For the next 8 days, the device sat in roughly 80-degree conditions, moving in patterns consistent with the inside of a digestive tract. When it finally passed out and washed ashore weeks later, the researchers were forced to publish the data with no explanation attached. A 9-foot great white had been swallowed and digested by something larger. The scientific community has never agreed on what. Read that again. A great white swallowed whole, digested for 8 days by an animal that the official record says does not exist in the waters it was swimming in. The footage from Guadalupe does not live in isolation anymore. It lives on a shelf next to that tag. And there is one more piece of evidence on that shelf. Brutal rules. To understand what the scar is actually saying, you have to understand how great whites treat each other when nobody is watching. They are not social animals. They patrol in loose individual territories and tolerate each other only when a food source is too rich to fight over. When they do meet, there is a hierarchy, and it is enforced with violence. The rules are simple. Size wins. Great white. Sharks are regular visitors to the rugged coastline of Mossel Bay. But the huge great white caught further up the coast presents a unique opportunity for experts to learn about the shark's anatomy. A larger shark displaces a smaller one. A pregnant female outranks a juvenile male. An intruder near a carcass gets a warning bump. If the warning is ignored, the next contact is a bite. Padilla and other researchers have documented these dominant strikes for decades. The marks are almost always aimed at the head, the gills, or the base of the tail. Shallow, angled, quick slashing wounds meant to communicate, not consume. They are never circular. They are never placed across the midsection of another adult. The Guadalupe female's wound is none of those things. Deep, round, placed dead center on her body. The exact spot a predator would target if it intended to eat her whole. So here is the deal. Cannibalism is part of great white life. Older sharks consume juveniles when the opportunity arises. A 10-foot shark contains more stored calories than 24 seals. But for an adult to attack another adult, especially a mature female of this size, the attacker would have to be operating at a scale that dwarfs the prey. Padilla's team has the number 25 to 30 feet. No such animal has ever been officially recorded alive. Officially. The conversation inside the lab has stopped being academic. Somebody has to say the other suspects out loud, if only to cross them off. Port and starboard. Whenever a wound like this comes up, the first name in the room is always the orca. In recent years, a pair of male killer whales off the coast of South Africa, identified by researchers as port and starboard, have been filmed systematically hunting great whites and extracting their livers with surgical precision. The attacks are so effective that entire aggregation sites have been abandoned by the sharks that used to feed there. When a pod of orcas moves in, the sharks leave, sometimes for months. At first glance, an orca seemed like a reasonable answer. Intelligent pack hunters, bigger than the shark, a documented history of doing this exact thing. But the evidence on the female's body does not match. Padilla points to the dentition. Orcas have large conical teeth spaced widely along heavy jaws. When they bite, they leave broad puncture marks in a blunt pattern. And critically, orcas do not consume prey in a single swallowing motion. They work in teams, flip the shark upside down to induce tonic immobility, and tear the belly open to access the liver. The wounds that result are ragged, messy, and very specifically located. The Guadalupe mark is none of that. Thin, dense, a single continuous arc of narrow, sharp, shark-like teeth. The pattern is not consistent with any cetacean mouth known to science. It is consistent with another shark, a very, very large shark. The spacing between individual tooth impressions matches the serrated triangular dentition of a lamniform, the family that contains great whites, makos, and, historically, megalodon. Padilla does not say the word. He does not have to. The shape of the arc has already said it for him. And somewhere between this is not an orca and this is not any great white we have ever seen, the room runs out of living suspects. Living ghost. You cannot talk about circular bite marks of this size without someone at the table finally saying it. Megalodon, the largest macropredatory shark in the fossil record, an animal that reached 60 feet in length, with teeth the size of a human palm and a jaw wide enough to swallow a small car whole. Officially, Megalodon went extinct about 3.6 million years ago when the oceans cooled and its preferred prey migrated into waters it could not follow. Mainstream science treats the question as closed. No reputable marine biologist publishes papers arguing that Megalodon still exists. The cooling of the oceans, the loss of the prey base, the absence of sightings in an era of satellite imagery. Have a look at this. This is a single tooth of Megalodon, a giant extinct shark, 3 times the size of a great white, 20 meters long. The case against survival is overwhelming. But here is the catch. A subset of the community will not let the door fully close. And their argument is not what you think. They are not claiming Megalodon never went extinct. They are claiming something more unsettling. When a top predator vanishes from the fossil record, it does not always mean total extinction. Sometimes it means the surviving population shifted into an environment where fossils do not form. The deep ocean does exactly that. Bodies that sink below about 3,000 feet rarely leave preserved remains, because the chemistry of the abyss dissolves bone and cartilage before sediment can cover it. A relic population living below that line would be, by definition, invisible to the fossil record that insists they are gone. This is why the geometry of the Guadalupe wound will not leave them alone. The jaw width of a young or subadult megalodon matches the measured arc with almost uncomfortable precision. Nobody in that lab is claiming proof. What they are saying, very carefully, is that the evidence refuses to be dismissed. And there is one more thing about the ocean around Guadalupe that makes the question even harder to close. The abysses. We have mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. That sentence gets repeated so often it has lost its weight, so sit with it. The ocean covers 71% of the planet. We have explored 5% of it, and get this, Isla Guadalupe is not just an island. It is the tip of an underwater volcanic structure that drops into some of the deepest trenches in the eastern Pacific. This is Guadalupe Island, offshore of Mexico, a remote volcanic paradise untouched by the activities of man. It is home to an abundance of species in the sky, on land, and under the waves crashing against its majestic shores. A few miles from where the Nautilus Explorer anchors, the sea floor falls away to more than 12,000 feet. That drop-off is the back door. Anything large enough to stay hidden could move up the face of that trench under cover of darkness, feed at the edge of the seal colonies, and retreat before first light. This is the point most people miss about deep-sea predators. They do not need to live at the surface. They only need to visit, and the deep already has giants in it. The colossal squid exceeds 40 feet. The giant six-gill shark reaches 15 feet and spends most of its life below 1,000 feet. The Greenland shark can live over 400 years and grow past 20 feet in cold, dark water. Size in the deep is the rule. There is one more piece of context nobody in Padilla's lab wants to bring up on camera. The waters around Guadalupe have been warming for decades. Prey migration patterns have shifted. Great white hunting zones have shifted with them. If there is something larger patrolling the trench, a warming surface layer pulls great whites into its reach for longer stretches of the year. The animal may not be new. The exposure is. Something is coming closer to the surface, and the Guadalupe female may be the first animal to come back up to tell us. Other answers. The megalodon hypothesis is not the only explanation on the table, and a responsible look at the scar has to present the alternatives. Each one is, in its own way, worse. The first is what researchers quietly call abyssal gigantism in a known species. Pacific sleeper sharks and Greenland sharks are already enormous, slow-moving ambush predators of the deep. They are known to eat seals, whales, and other sharks. If a subpopulation in the trenches off Baja has grown to 30 feet through the same mechanism that produces giant isopods and colossal squid, we would have our attacker without needing to resurrect a prehistoric species. The wound would be explained, and the explanation would itself be a revolution in biology. The second is a genetic outlier among living great whites. Every population occasionally produces an individual that never stops growing. A 30-foot great white, born from the existing gene pool but unconstrained by normal growth limits, would be invisible to most surveys. These animals rarely come into shallow water. They hunt whales, they die in the deep, and they sink. We might only ever encounter them through the scars they leave on other predators. The third is the one nobody wants to say out loud because it is the hardest to disprove. A species we have not yet identified. The coelacanth was thought to have gone extinct around 65 million years ago in the late Cretaceous, during the Great Extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. And yet, in 1938, one was found off the coast of South Africa, alive. The coelacanth was declared extinct for 65 million years until a fisherman caught one in 1938. The megamouth shark, a 15-foot plankton-feeding species, was unknown to science until 1976. The history of marine biology is a list of animals that were insisted not to exist, right up until the day one was pulled out of the water. So here is the deal. Whichever of these three turns out to be correct, a single conclusion is inescapable. Something in our current understanding of the Pacific food chain is incomplete. The Guadalupe female is evidence of a predator we have not cataloged, a ghost from the Pliocene, a giant version of a species we already know, or a creature that has no name yet at all, and whichever one it is still out there. The message. The female drifted away from the cages and disappeared into the blue. The crew tracked her briefly on sonar before she descended beyond range. She may come back next season, she may not. Either way, the scar she carried is now one of the most quietly important pieces of biological evidence recorded in the 21st century. Here is the thought Hoyo says he cannot shake. She survived, which means the animal that attacked her is still out there, still hunting, still patrolling the trench below the island, and somewhere, right now, other sharks are swimming with marks we have not seen because they never came close enough to a camera to show us. Every time we put a camera into the water, we are not studying the sea. We are asking it a question, and every now and then, the sea answers back with something it was never supposed to show us. If you believe a prehistoric giant like Megalodon could still be hiding in the canyons off Guadalupe, drop a comment below and tell us why. If you think the answer is something stranger, a new species, a rogue giant, something we have not yet named, tell us that too. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so the next piece of evidence reaches you the moment we find it. And stay with us. The ocean is not finished revealing itself, and the next scar might not belong to a shark at all.